Hey, David Raffoff here. In today's video, we're going to continue with the tutorial on building an RPG-style inventory system based loosely off of, or based closely, I guess, off of Skyrim and SkyUI. In previous videos, just covered how to set up like a scrollable list with buttons in it. And in this video, what we're going to do is look at how to build that based off of inventory and figure out how to track an inventory and create items for your inventory. And then also just set up a little area to display some details about it. And then in a follow-up video, in the next video, we'll get into covering how to actually get the two areas to start talking to each other using events. But it takes a little while to explain how that works, and this video is already getting kind of long, so just went ahead and had this just focus on getting an inventory set up and some items and building out a list of buttons for the inventory based off of that. So thanks for joining me. I'm going to hop right into it. Okay, so here I'm just going to go over here to the inventory list, and you can see sometimes, I don't know, I think with this newer beta version of Unity, the game objects shift around a little bit sometimes. I haven't quite figured out exactly why, so just slid that back into place. And here I'm just going to go ahead and start a new folder and be adding a folder for Scriptable Objects. And Scriptable Objects are a different kind of object in Unity than the mono behaviors that you usually use. And these can be really great for storing data and making a bunch of different instances of things that have similar data. So here I'm just going to go ahead and add a scriptable object for an inventory item. At some point it'll probably get more specialized and have different ones for like weapons and items and things like that. But for now, this is a good place to start. So get that loaded up here, and you'll notice when I get the editor set up that instead of inheriting from a mono behavior, I'll change it up to inherit from scriptable object. And what we'll do is set this up as kind of a template and a menu, and we'll be able to use this to generate a bunch of different items in the game. And we'll just start with weapons as an example. Just having a little bit of trouble with the editor here, but it's getting there. And you can see, yeah, by default, Unity is going to set that up as a class that inherits from mono behavior, and include some dependencies up there that we don't need. So you can just get rid of the collections related items. And then this is a special marker here. I can't remember exactly how Unity refers to these, but it's an instruction to the editor to let it know that we want to have a menu available from the editor, and we want to be able with that menu to just make these items for inventory items. So the menu will be inventory/item, and the default file name will be item when we use it. You'll see here in a minute what all that's about and where that shows up. So we're just going to go ahead and put a string in here that's a label for kind of like a name for the item. And I'll keep it pretty simple for now. Later on, we'll probably add more information in here about each item. But I just want to get the basics going first. I find it's usually, I really like to work in very small chunks and just get really basic things going and confirm that they're working, and then kind of just iteratively build up on it. So down there at the bottom, there's just an error about it not actually being a scriptable object. It's still inheriting from mono behavior. So I'm just going to go in there and update that, and then we should be good. And those messages have gone away at this point, and now you'll see we can do a right click and do create. I kind of breezed past it there, but we just made a new folder here for inventory items. I'm going to make another folder within that for weapons, and that'll just be the inventory items we start with. And then here we can now use that inventory item menu to create an item. So this is just an instance of the scriptable object, and we'll call the instance Daedric Sword and also update the label over there. And the label is what we'll use in our scripts. So here I'm just going to add a number of items. If you're familiar with the Elder Scrolls games, these all look really familiar. Just adding 4 or 5 weapons of just different types, so we have some variety in our menu. And one thing that's really nice about these scriptable objects is, as a programmer, you can set up these systems and these kind of data containers, and by making these menus, you can open up creation of items to other people in the project who aren't software developers, so they can go in and they can make their own items. And there's a lot of neat tricks you can do with it. You can use them to really kind of make the most of different systems by allowing different kinds of customization to the systems by settings on those data objects. You can kind of think of them as like configurations. So at this point, adding another folder, and we're going to go ahead and make a scripts folder here because we're going to need some scripts for managing the inventory. And I'm going to make an inventory item list script that we can use just to control the inventory. So yeah, what we want to do is, if you're not familiar with it in Unity, is when you're adding behavior to different things in your game, you want to create scripts and attach them to your game objects, and try to have the scripts just focus on kind of like one responsibility as much as possible. So here we're going to make an inventory item list, and that's going to control generating that list of items that we see in the scrolling list, where we at the moment just have a bunch of hard-coded button game objects. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make like a template we can use for the button, and then we'll want to have like a list that we're keeping track of for our inventory items. And then we will use the list and the template, the button template, to generate all of the buttons for all of the items in the inventory. I'm setting up some private values here that we can use to track what the menu item template is, and then also where the content should end up. And by adding a serialized field above these, even though these are private, have private accessors, you can still update their values in the Unity UI. So we have one for the content area, one for the menu item template, which is like our button, and then one for our list of items. And one thing that's nice about exposing that list is then we can also manage what's in that list from the Unity UI if we want to. And then here I'm just adding a method called add menu items that's going to go from 0 to 1 less than the size of the list, and then it's just going to call add menu item with the item in the list at that index. And then I need to add the actual implementation for add menu item. And what that'll do is based on the item in the list, it'll make a new instance of the menu item template and then set it up with all the values that we want to have for that new game object, and then I'll add it to the content area. And because of how we've set up the content previously, it's going to just automatically control laying things out correctly. So we just have to add, all we have to do basically is add our game objects in the order that we want them to appear in from like top to bottom. And the work that we did previously will just take care of the layout for us. So here, just declaring a new game object, new menu item, setting up its label. So there's just leaving a few spaces at the beginning to make it look a little bit nicer. And then I'm referring to that label property of item that we set earlier. So that'll be like Daedric Sword or Glass Sword. And then the next line, just instantiating that new object and using the current object's position and rotation, setting a name, setting the item, adding it to the list. So now we can go in and just get rid of all these hard-coded buttons. We don't need those. And there'll still be some work to do in the Unity UI. So here, trying to add the inventory item list script to the inventory item list game object. Getting an error about that. Okay, looks like it worked that way. And then there's just a problem in the code it was complaining about. Okay, so we're trying to find item chooser. That doesn't exist yet, so we just commented it out there. And one thing the code was doing was setting the button that we're creating state to active, and also updating the text automatically based off of the item. Okay, so now that the script's set up, you can see our inventory item list script on our inventory item list game object lets us choose how many items we want to have. That's what that size is for the list. And then above it, we can set what the content game object is and what the menu item template game object is. And then within that list of 15 items, we can start dragging across all of the scriptable game object instances that we made for inventory items. And these could be anything. You can, anything that you made through that menu system, you just be able to drop in here. And eventually, we'll probably want to treat these things like inventory slots that we expect to. Well, we'll have to make a decision about that if we want to allow like empty slots or how we want to deal with that kind of issue. But for now, we'll just assume they're all full. And there we go. We've got a list that's generated based off of the data, and each of those is a button that you can click on. So we're in pretty good shape here with just the list. So the next thing we'll want to have is a way to actually choose the item. And that'll be a script that we'll want to attach to those buttons that we're generating. And this is going to probably be split across, or this will be split across two videos. So what we'll do here is we'll set up the ability to choose an item and just show what's being selected, probably in the debugger. And then we'll also move on to showing some details about that item and the area on the right. And then I'll save actually looking into how to get the two to communicate with each other to the following video. And that's partly because it'll take a little bit of explanation to go through like how that works and how to get that set up correctly. So here I'm just setting up a choose item, public choose item method that's just going to log out whichever item was selected. And then in the Unity editor, we'll want to go in and wire up the button click to be able to use that. And here I'm just re-enabling that line from earlier that that calls the item, gets the item from the item chooser. So here we're adding the item chooser to our button template, or menu item template. And I'm just going to go ahead and set the button to an active, so you can see it kind of grayed out on the left over there when we did that. And the script will take care of setting the copies we make to active. But basically, we just don't want that button in that list and risk accidentally interacting with it. It's just there as a template. So yeah, so now basically we need to wire up the click action. So here you can just hit that plus, and then below the little drop down there for runtime. Let's see. Yeah, below the drop down for runtime, you can drop a game object in there, and then if you open that menu, you'll see if there's a script attached to it, like there is with item chooser. You can open that and choose the methods from within that. And so it showed up off screen, but I just selected choose item. And now you can see, it might be a little hard to see because the icon's in the way, but down in the debugger, as I click through that list, it's just dumping out the item. So yep, I think the menu on the left is more or less working as far as we're going to take it in this video. And then here on the right now, we can just go ahead and set up a little area for displaying information about a selected item. Yeah, resizing this can be a little tricky. I end up just usually switching over to like the scaling tools to be able to do this. Sometimes panels can be kind of hard to get a hold of. Yep, had the same problem again there. Grab the wrong control. Okay, so yeah, basically what we want to have is a little, to mimic kind of the Skyrim or the SkyUI setup for menus. We want to have our list for selecting things on the left and then the details about it on the right. So just setting this up as like a background behind that detail area. And then we'll also need to, at a minimum, bring in a place to display the selected item name. So I just want to add a Unity UI text to that, and then just kind of adjust its settings a little bit. Probably want the text to be, want some better default text in there. So like select an item, and then make the text a bit bigger and center it vertically and horizontally and kind of reposition it in the right place. Yeah, and if you hold down Alt when you resize, it'll do that where it resizes from every corner, which is kind of handy. And that text is probably a bit too big, so bump that down a little bit. That looks about right. It may still be big. I'll have to see how it looks like relative to the other detailed text when we get it. And then again, we'll want to have a script to be able to control this area, so we'll just make a item details script for that. And for now, what we'll do is just have a place to store an item on it, and we'll set up that text based on whatever that item is. And then, as I mentioned in the next video, we'll go through how to actually get the menu on the left and the details on the right talking to each other, so that as you select items, it updates as you would expect it to update. So here, just adding a place to store an item, and then also store a reference to the text game object, so we can just refer to it directly when we do set item here. So now we have a set item that just takes an item, and then based on that item, updates the text. And then we need to go attach our script. And then that script also needs to know where the text is and what the item is. So for now, we'll just drop an item on it. It could be anything. And we'll run it. And our list on the left still looks good, but you notice the text did not get updated on the right side, so I need to take a look at what's going on there. Hey, so thanks for joining me as we went through figuring out how to set up an inventory list and generating that inventory dynamically. And I look forward to hopping into going through the event system in the next video. It takes a while to explain it, so I just didn't want to make this video any longer than it already is, but yeah, thanks for following along. If you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments. If you have suggestions too, those are welcome. I'm just kind of a hobbyist, so if there's a better way to do these things, definitely would like to know about that. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe. And if you want to be notified as new videos come out, make sure you hit the little bell icon. And I'll see you in the next one.